Hollywood has witnessed countless bidding wars over the decades, studios clashing over scripts, directors, and talent in battles that shape the industry for years to come. But when Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich's screenplay for what would become Independence Day hit studio offices, something entirely different unfolded. This wasn't a slow burn of negotiations and careful deliberation. Within days of those pages circulating through Hollywood, all 9 major studios had thrown themselves into a fierce, frantic competition to secure the rights. Executives were making phone calls at midnight, desperately trying to outbid rivals before morning came. The speed alone was enough to stun even the most seasoned veterans in the business. People who had seen projects generate buzz before, but never quite like this. Fox emerged from the chaos victorious, driven by their urgent need for a massive summer release that could dominate the 1996 box office. They won the prize, but they had absolutely no idea just how wild the journey ahead would become, because the story of how Independence Day was made is as explosive, unpredictable, and thrilling as anything that appears on screen. Before any cameras rolled, before a single actor stepped on the set, the very concept behind the film was born not in a polished writer's room or a studio development meeting, but in a hotel room during a press tour. Emmerich and Devlin were on the road promoting their previous film Stargate, bouncing ideas off each other between press junkets and interviews, killing time the way creative people do. The concept clicked during one of those casual conversations, arriving with the kind of electric clarity that tells you immediately you have something real, rather than letting it sit and risk losing the momentum. They locked themselves in a hotel room and began writing with everything they had. They gave themselves just 3 weeks to produce a finished screenplay. Pages poured out fast, ideas spilling onto paper in a sustained creative sprint that left almost no room for second-guessing or self-doubt. What began as a casual roadside conversation transformed within weeks into a finished script that would ignite a 9-studio bidding war. The entire sequence of events, from idea to completed screenplay to Hollywood frenzy, happened so quickly that it barely seemed real even to the people living through it. One of the most iconic images in modern cinema history, the White House erupting in a massive wall of fire, was not originally conceived as a marketing tool. It wasn't planned to anchor trailers or sell the film to audiences before release. It came together during production, and its power as a promotional weapon was only discovered once it existed. Creating that shot required one of the most elaborate miniature setups ever constructed for a disaster sequence. The effects team built a massive, exquisitely detailed model of the White House and rigged it with precisely timed pyrotechnics that had to work perfectly on a single attempt. There was no second chance, no opportunity to reset and try again. When the cameras rolled and fire consumed that miniature in seconds, the footage was so viscerally stunning that marketing executives watching it immediately understood they were looking at something unprecedented. That single shot became the absolute centerpiece of every trailer, every television commercial, and especially the legendary Super Bowl advertisement that introduced the film to mass audiences. Millions of tickets were sold largely on the strength of that one image, proof that a single unforgettable visual can carry an entire campaign on its back. The casting of the film's lead role turned into one of the most heated internal battles of the entire production. When Will Smith's name came up in discussions, Fox executives grew hesitant, and their hesitation had nothing to do with his talent or his appeal to American audiences. Their concern was international. In 1996, the studio genuinely believed that global audiences would not accept Smith as an action lead, that his star power simply did not extend beyond American borders in the way the film's worldwide commercial ambitions required. Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin pushed back with remarkable force and consistency, refusing to let the idea die. They saw something in Smith that the executives could not yet see, a performer capable of simultaneously carrying humor, heroism, and genuine heart. Someone whose charisma could hold together a sprawling ensemble cast and make audiences root for humanity's survival through a single magnetic presence. The debate stretched on, growing more intense as both sides dug in. The filmmakers ultimately won, and what happened next vindicated their instincts in the most dramatic way possible. Smith did not merely prove the studio wrong about his international appeal. The role launched him into a category of global stardom that very few performers ever reach, fundamentally reshaping the trajectory of his entire career. While the casting battles raged behind the scenes, Preparations for the film's visual effects were pushing practical crews to extraordinary lengths. The alien mothership alone presented a challenge unlike anything effects teams had previously attempted. This was not going to be handled primarily through early digital technology. The decision was made to build one of the largest, most detailed miniatures ever constructed for a motion picture, a physical model of such enormous scale that it pushed the boundaries of what anyone believed was achievable through practical means. Artists spent thousands of hours adding surface details to the massive structure, carefully crafting panels, textures, and features that would convince audiences they were looking at something genuinely enormous hanging over their cities. The dedication extended even to sections that might appear on screen for only a few seconds. Every inch received attention. Every surface was treated with the kind of meticulous craftsmanship that separates exceptional work from merely adequate work. When cameras finally captured the completed mothership looming over miniature cityscapes, the practical nature of the effect gave it a gravitational presence, a sense of real physical weight that purely digital creations of that era consistently struggled to match. The destruction of New York and Los Angeles required building those cities first, and the miniature construction process became something bordering on obsession. Effects artists did not simply create generic building facades that would look convincing enough from a camera distance. They constructed entire city blocks complete with tiny parked cars, accurate period signage, scattered street debris, and props that most audiences would never consciously register even if they looked directly at them. Teams spent weeks adding features that cameras might capture for mere seconds before everything was consumed by fire and debris. Window reflections were carefully considered. Building surfaces were deliberately weathered. Miniature fire hydrants and mailboxes were positioned exactly where they would be in real cities. Many of those painstaking details disappeared entirely in fireballs and debris clouds, never to be seen by any human eye. But the artists understood something profound about their craft. That subconscious believability comes from accumulated layers of realism, even layers the conscious mind never processes. That commitment to invisible craftsmanship is precisely what made the destruction sequences feel so genuinely devastating rather than spectacular in a hollow, unconvincing way. The production made a deliberate strategic choice at a time when digital effects were rapidly becoming the industry standard. Rather than leaning fully into the emerging technology, the filmmakers committed heavily to practical techniques that have been the backbone of cinematic spectacle for decades. Real explosions, actual fire, physical miniatures, and tangible destruction formed the core of what audiences would see on screen. This decision was not simply nostalgic preference for old methods. It was a calculated recognition that the tactile realism of practical effects provided something that early computer-generated imagery genuinely could not replicate. Audiences could feel the difference even when they could not intellectually articulate what they were sensing. The fireballs had real heat behind them. The debris followed actual physics. The chaos operated according to laws that existed in the physical world rather than in a computer's mathematical approximation of it. Decades later, that judgment has been thoroughly vindicated. The practical effects in the film hold up with remarkable integrity, while digital work from the same period often looks unmistakably dated. The choice to embrace traditional techniques created visuals that remain genuinely unforgettable. Not all of those practical techniques felt entirely safe in the moment they were being captured. The sequence featuring a character sprinting through collapsing tunnels with fire racing behind her pushed the boundaries of controlled filmmaking in ways that genuinely alarmed safety professionals on set. What was designed as a controlled burn escalated unexpectedly. Flames behaved in ways that defied the calculations that had established the safety margins. Fire spread faster and burned hotter than anyone had anticipated, and safety teams later acknowledged that the situation came closer to spiraling out of control than anyone was comfortable admitting. The fear captured in the actor performance during that sequence was not manufactured through craft or technique. It was real adrenaline, real survival instinct responding to a genuinely threatening situation. That authenticity transferred directly and powerfully to the screen, producing one of the most viscerally intense moments in the entire film. Sometimes the most honest performances emerge not from careful preparation and rehearsal, but from real circumstances that bypass the actor's conscious control entirely. Among the most beloved performances in the film, Jeff Goldblum's portrayal of David Levinson stands out for qualities that were not fully present on any version of the script. The character as written was solid and functional, but Goldblum's improvisational instincts transformed him into something genuinely distinctive. His rambling logic, his nervous energy, his unexpected emotional spontaneity turned scenes that were designed as straightforward exposition into vivid character moments that audiences immediately connected with. Directors recognized what was happening and gave him the space to explore, a decision that reshaped multiple scenes on the spot to accommodate choices he made in the moment. Technical jargon that should have felt dry became oddly funny and weirdly charming through his delivery. Emotional beats that could have felt perfunctory gained real warmth through his spontaneity. The cast and crew understood fairly quickly that they were watching something genuinely special develop in real time, a performance being built not from a script, but from genuine human instinct meeting the right creative opportunity. A similar kind of spontaneous magic produced what became one of the most quoted lines in the film's history, and arguably one of the most recognizable improvised moments in 1990 cinema. The famous welcome to Earth delivery following Smith's character's encounter with the alien never appeared in any draft of the screenplay. It was pure unscripted spontaneity, delivered on set without any prior warning to the director or fellow cast members. The crew's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. Everyone present understood they had just witnessed something that could not have been planned and could not be improved upon through revision. The line felt so natural, so perfectly calibrated to the character and the moment, that audiences universally assumed it had been carefully crafted by a writer. That it emerged from a single instinctive creative decision on set makes it even more remarkable. It became a cultural touchstone that has been referenced, quoted, and parodied continuously for 3 decades. Another memorable scene had its origins in similarly unplanned territory, though in this case the spontaneity was engineered through deliberate strategy. The alien autopsy sequence was transformed significantly through last-minute directorial decisions made just before cameras rolled. What was conceived as an unsettling but controlled scene became something far more intense and physically confrontational than the cast had been led to expect. Actors arrived on set without being warned about how aggressive and visceral the experience would actually become. When the scene escalated suddenly, the alarm on their faces reflected genuine shock, not performance. That authentic surprise and genuine physical reaction produced some of the most honest emotional moments in the entire production. The decision to withhold information from the actors paid off in performances that careful preparation and rehearsal could never have generated. For the autopsy sequence itself, the filmmakers drew deliberately on techniques borrowed from horror cinema, a genre with very different rhythms and priorities than the disaster blockbuster surrounding it. The lighting was designed to create unsettling shadows. Editorial choices revealed information slowly, building dread rather than delivering it immediately. Sound design made every moment feel subtly wrong in ways that worked on the audience below the level of conscious awareness. The clinical setting of a medical examination, which might have felt sterile and distancing, instead amplified the discomfort, making the alien presence feel more genuinely threatening through understatement than through spectacle. This brief tonal departure gave the film essential variety, offering audiences something to genuinely disturb them amid all the triumphant action and explosive heroism. The film's president was nearly someone else entirely. Fox executives came to the casting process with a specific vision firmly in mind, a younger, conventionally handsome leading man of the type that typically anchored major summer films. Bill Pullman did not fit that profile, and the studio communicated their reservations clearly and repeatedly. Emmerich and Devlin refused to accept the studio's preference. They argued consistently for a different kind of presidential presence, someone who projected genuine authority and emotional steadiness rather than cinematic heroism in a more conventional sense. The disagreement was genuine and sustained, neither side willing to concede. When the filmmakers prevailed and Pullman took the role, his performance provided exactly what they had envisioned and more. He gave the film a grounded emotional center that the surrounding spectacle needed desperately, a presence audiences could genuinely believe in rather than simply admire from a comfortable distance. That grounded presence was tested most memorably in a scene built around dialogue that was never intended to survive to the finished film. Dean Devlin wrote the president's inspirational pre-battle speech in approximately 5 minutes, treating it explicitly as placeholder material, something functional enough to fill the space until proper rewrites could address it. The team fully planned to replace those rushed lines with something more considered and carefully crafted. Then Bill Pullman performed them during filming, and the plan dissolved instantly. Cast and crew fell silent watching the delivery. The throwaway words, spoken with genuine conviction and emotional investment, became something that could not be improved upon or replaced without loss. What began as a 5-minute draft became one of the most quoted and parroted speeches in blockbuster history, a reminder that the pressure of a deadline and the instinct of a great performer can sometimes produce something that deliberate craft never would. Fox executives were not finished raising objections, even as production neared its conclusion. The sacrificial finale for one of the film's central characters generated serious anxiety within the studio, with concerns that the sequence was too emotionally dark and tonally jarring for a film that had maintained a largely triumphant, crowd-pleasing energy throughout. The suggestion came down formally to consider cutting or significantly altering the scene. Emmerich refused with the same conviction he had applied to every other battle throughout the production. The character's entire arc demanded exactly this ending. A redemption story built on that foundation required completion through genuine sacrifice, not a softened alternative that protected audiences from real emotional consequence. The director won again, and the sequence became one of the film's most powerful and enduring moments, proof that respecting an audience's emotional capacity, rather than underestimating it, almost always produces superior results. The production also received an unexpected refusal from an institution that typically cooperated with Hollywood. When military officials read the script and encountered references to Area 51, they declined to provide any official support, assistance, or access to equipment and locations. The subject matter made cooperation impossible from their perspective. Filmmakers who had planned around military access suddenly faced the challenge of building their own military environments from scratch without any institutional help. The forced independence ultimately gave the production more creative control than official cooperation would have permitted, a reminder that obstacles sometimes create better outcomes than smooth paths would have generated. Even the film's release timing carried consequences that nobody fully anticipated at the time. Before Independence Day, the July 4th holiday weekend was not considered among Hollywood's most valuable release windows. Studios aimed their biggest productions at Memorial Day or later summer dates. The film's massive success over that holiday permanently altered those calculations. The patriotic themes, the explosive spectacle, and the timing created a box office phenomenon that executives across the industry studied with intense focus. July 4th transformed almost overnight into one of the most competitive and strategically important weekends on the Hollywood release calendar, a transformation that has persisted for the 3 decades since. One film's perfectly matched timing reshaped how the entire industry approached summer distribution strategy, creating commercial traditions that continue shaping decisions made in studio boardrooms today. What Independence Day achieved ultimately extended far beyond its extraordinary box office performance or its influence on release scheduling. It established a template for large-scale ensemble disaster filmmaking that studios spent the next 20 years attempting to replicate, with varying degrees of success. It proved that practical effects deployed with genuine craft and commitment could compete with and often surpass emerging digital technology in the most demanding visual contexts. It demonstrated that improvisation and spontaneous human creativity could elevate meticulously planned productions in ways that no amount of careful scripting could have predicted or engineered. Every spectacular frame of the finished film contains within a decision made under pressure, a battle won by instinct over institutional caution, a moment of genuine human creativity emerging from chaos rather than control. That is what makes the story of how the film came together as compelling as the film itself.